Joining us now, the first woman elected governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. She joined fellow Republican governors in a meeting at the White House yesterday, and it's great to have you on the show this morning.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Governor. You've said that South Dakota has been devastated by the trade wars that we're currently in. Explain.
Well, the president has recognized that we've been treated unfairly for years by China's trade policies. The problem we have is that this has gone on for a while now, and commodity prices have been at record lows for several years, and it really is impacting our farmers. So my conversations with the president is thank you for fighting for fair trade agreements, but we do need resolution quickly because we're in the situation where a lot of families are facing the loss of their operations and their businesses.
Can you go into the impact? Exactly how is it impacting families that farm and the agricultural business in general in your state and others?
Well, agriculture is highly leveraged. You know, you borrow money to buy land, you borrow money to go out there and purchase cattle, equipment, whatever you need to farm that land, and then farmers go back every year and borrow money to put seed, fertilizer, chemical in the ground. So they're highly leveraged, and it's a very risky industry. The weather impacts it, markets impact it, and a lot of their transportation costs they can't control. So that's why they can handle maybe a season of poor prices, poor yields. But when you start piling those years on top of each other is when it gets very difficult, and they end up losing their family land that may have been in their land in their family for generations.
So you've spoken to the president, and you've thanked him for fighting for fairer trade, but at the same time you've asked him if he could to wrap it up, to bring these trade wars to a conclusion. Have you gotten the feeling from either the president or members of the administration you've spoken with that they understand your concerns and that in fact we can expect these trade wars to be coming to a close soon?
Well, absolutely. You know, I've talked to the president about this really for the last couple of years. I have served in Congress. I represented the state in the House on the Ways and Means Committee that oversees all trade agreements. I've worked closely with the U.S. Trade Ambassador Lighthizer, and also Sonny Perdue, the Secretary of Agriculture, and I have talked multiple times. So we have talked on a weekly basis for months and months about this, and I was encouraged this weekend by what I heard. The Secretary of Agriculture, Ambassador Lighthizer, and the President all indicated that they made progress this weekend with China, that we're very close to getting better trade agreements, that we will be opening up markets real soon, and we did have a purchase of more U.S. soybeans, which will make an impact on the market that our farmers so desperately need. So, you know, the news is good, it's positive, but we really need to have resolution and secure those markets. We feed the world, and we do it better than anywhere else, and that is really what's important to my producers in South Dakota and across the country.
Governor Noem, it's Willie Geist. It's good to see you this morning. The president on Monday announced that there will be a signing ceremony. He didn't say when yet, with President Xi on a new trade agreement. He has said in the past that trade wars are good and easy to win. That was his quote. Is it your sense, talking to him, that he actually believes that, or is it that there was some sort of a negotiation tactic to push China to come to the table?
No, that's what this president does best, is make deals. You know, he puts his cards on the table. He asks hard questions. He pushes these leaders for better agreements for his people. He loves America.
But aren't you saying this is a bad deal for your state?
I would say the previous deals have been. Previous trade agreements have treated us unfairly. We've sent our soybeans to China. They've rejected them at the border for regulatory reasons, and that can't continue. So the fact that the president is addressing this head on is good. My message continuously to them is that we need to wrap it up, that we can't handle another year or 2 years of these ongoing negotiations because, frankly, we'll have a lot of people out of business.
So you're saying the president's previous deals have been bad for your state, and it's time to sign a good deal?
No. I would say previous presidents' deals. For decades, we have had
tariffs have been bad for your state, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that I'm thankful that he's negotiating and getting us better trade agreements. For decades, we've been treated unfairly. The president has recognized that, and he is negotiating better trade agreements for us into the future.
Governor,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'm from an agricultural state. It is our #1 part of our economy, just like your state. I've seen the pain all across Missouri from what has happened, that the president put in motion. And, you know, it took years for us to build up this bean market in China. This didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of investment, as you well know, in terms of opening up this very important market to soybean producers in this country. And China now knows, with this guy in the Oval Office, that this light switch could flip again. It may go back on, but then it could go back off. Do you really believe that these markets are going to be restored overnight? They've now sourced beans from other countries. They have now figured out how to get around their requirement of beans without American beans. And I know the farmers I talk to are very worried about the hangover from this fight and whether or not they can recover even this growing season or maybe even next with restoring that location for us to sell our beans.
China just recently announced that they will be purchasing more soybeans. We saw the market react. They are still heavily reliant on United States soybeans. They have been impacted by the tariffs and by these negotiations, and that's brought them to the table to negotiate better agreements going forward. So yes, if this continued on for years, yes, absolutely, China would look to other countries to fill their needs, but they still need American soybeans, and that's why it's important that right now we use every leverage that we have, every option that we have to get better deals for our trade agreements and our farmers ongoing. You know, this has been decades in the making, and this president's trying to get us a level playing field. We're just encouraging him to make sure he keeps the pressure on, because we need resolution and we need to open up those markets.
And Governor, really quickly, you're asking for help for a drug epidemic in your state, the meth epidemic. China also, obviously, it's fentanyl. Has been flooding American markets with drugs illegally. Are they responsible for the meth? Or is that more of a problem with Mexican cartels?
You know, when you turn on the national news, a lot of discussion is around opioids, and that is an issue in South Dakota. We do have some issues with China shipping some drugs and fentanyl into the United States, and the president spoke to that this weekend several times with all the governors that were gathered in meetings, and so he's well aware that that is an issue that we need to address with China as well. In South Dakota, our biggest problem, though, is still meth. It's cheap, it's readily available everywhere, and that is the battle and the war that we fight every single day in South Dakota. The vast majority of that meth comes across our southern border. And so I'm all in favor of securing our border, not just for national security reasons, but also to stop the illegal drug flow that's killing my people. And meth is a terrible drug.
Would you prefer the money be focused on where most of the meth comes in, and that's the legal ports of entry?
You know, I'm looking for a secure border. I'm looking for ports of entry to be focused on as well. What I've asked this administration for is some latitude. We did some legislation last Congress that I supported that made sure that we had opioid funding for states to utilize. I've asked for some waivers and some authority to make sure I can use some of those dollars to fight meth. While we have an opioid problem in South Dakota, our overwhelming concern is meth. And it's a drug that causes people to be aggressive. They commit crimes and violence against each other, and that's something that South Dakotans don't want in their communities.
All right,
Governor Kristi Noem.
Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you being with us.
All right, coming up in her short time in office, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has built a unique national platform, but on a local level, some say she's missing something. We'll explain that ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.